If you have ever had even a surface-level conversation about blacks in the United States of America, chances are that you have heard of the brown paper bag test or the paper bag test. Briefly, in case you haven't heard of it, the brown paper bag test is an early 1900s discriminatory practice that blacks used against other blacks, in which an individual's skin tone is compared to the color of a brown paper bag. One was set to pass the test by having a skin tone that matched the hue of the paper bag or was lighter than the paper bag. What did passing the test mean? Access to privileges. Those privileges could be anything from gaining membership to sororities, fraternities, and other social clubs, or gaining admission to schools and even churches. Definitely not an example of black people at our finest hour. But today, I want to discuss the black and partially black people who opened the door that allowed the paper bag test to become a reality. The lighter black Americans who used the brown paper bag test as a tactic to distance themselves from darker black Americans actually had a predecessor group of light complexioned blacks, biracials, mulattos, quadroons, and octoroons who prided themselves on their proximity to whiteness and saw dark complexioned blacks as inferior. The pre-brown paper bag testing group was called the Blue Vein Society. As their name suggests, they delighted in having skin that was so white that their blue veins could be seen through it. And they wanted absolutely nothing to do with other blacks whose veins were concealed by their dark skin. And they went out of their ways to make their disdain for those dark-skinned blacks to be made public. Let's get into it. But first, if you like these videos about the most scandalous times from yesteryear that make the Ty Said What Ty Said channel a time capsule for the culture, subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can know every time that I upload one of these videos or every time that I live stream. And comment "I subscribed" in the comments section so that I can say hello to you. Now, on to why you are here. So, what exactly was the Blue Vein Society? The Blue Vein Society was a loosely organized organization that aimed to identify who was white enough to be considered the upper echelon of blacks. If your skin was so dark that you couldn't see blue veins through it, you were not considered for membership. Their hierarchy held white people at the top, in first place. In a very close second place were the members of the Blue Vein Society themselves, light-skinned black people and people who, because of the one-drop rule at that time, were considered black. People who would have been classified as biracials, mulattoes, quadroons, and octoroons. And then finally, at a very distant third place, were dark-skinned blacks, who the members of the Blue Vein Society felt were inferior in every way. For the sake of context, it is very important to add that the earliest mention that I can find of a Blue Vein Society is in a newspaper article from 1873. That means that less than 10 years after slavery was abolished in the United States, black people and people who were considered black immediately started discriminating against dark-skinned black people. The highest priority items were not establishing freedom or equality for themselves, or establishing some way to gain access to money or land or laws that will protect them. No, simply first establishing that we blue veins are better than you darkies was enough. Their top priority was lightness and proximity to whiteness. The irony is that, while Blue Vein Society members were busy distancing themselves from dark-skinned blacks in the hopes to attain adjacency to their pure white counterparts, the white people of that era were shooing them off, wanting nothing to do with dark-skinned or light-skinned blacks, and being equally amused and offended at the notion that light-skinned blacks dare compare themselves to white people. But for the most part, the blacks of that time fully bought into what members of the Blue Vein Society believed. In a nutshell, the lighter, the better. So here the nation was, literally just a few years after the Emancipation Proclamation. White communities were trying to keep black people, both light and dark, away from them, and lighter black people tried to keep darker black people away from them. Light skin was a privilege that they wanted to keep, and they were ruthless and intentional in their efforts to establish their hierarchy, whether it was in their homes, at work, at school, and yes, even at church. The Blue Vein Society was relentless. Here are a few specific examples from newspapers from 1911, 1893, and 1896. I will just read all of the stories and sprinkle in a little commentary. Let's start with the one that seems to be the least harmful, that was published in the Arizona Republican on December 20th, 1893. It was printed in the local briefs that day, and it simply reads, "A Blue Vein Society is being organized by the colored people of Phoenix. Frank Shirley of the Fashion Barber Shop is at the head of the movement, and all the barbers in his employ, except Messrs. Thomas and Polk, will be admitted. All who have white blood are eligible to membership." Nothing much to see here except for that the barbers who were too dark are called out by name in the newspaper. Super tacky. The next story is a bit more harmful and involves Blue Vein Society members denying dark-skinned adults employment as teachers and dark-skinned children access to education. It's from an 1896 edition of the Chicago Tribune, and it reads, "Blue Vein in contempt. Negroes at Washington participate in a race war. Octoroons and other of light color are accused of receiving favors at schools. Factional strife results in a clamor from the full-blooded Ethiopians who resent the snubs. Their brethren accuse them of dullness." And by dullness, this writer is referring to dim-wittedness or brainlessness. And I think it very odd that the writer refers to them as full-blooded Ethiopians. Let me know your thoughts about that. Anyway, back to the article. Washington, D.C., May 1st. A peculiar race war is going on here in Washington, which has broken out with unusual virulence. It is nothing more or less than a fight between two factions of colored people representing the pure blacks and those of lighter skins. The very dark Negroes have begun holding a series of meetings in which they say that those of their race with a large portion of Caucasian blood in their veins are securing all the benefits of the colored schools of the district. The fight has arrived at the stage where the two parties are making serious charges against each other. Men of lighter complexions, like ex-Senator B.K. Bruce, are being charged freely by their black-skinned brethren with misappropriating the funds intended for the use of the colored schools, and also with partiality in the selection of teachers. The pure blacks say that they are not given the slightest show, and that whenever one of their color comes up for examination for the normal school, he invariably is shut out by someone of the favorites whose skin more nearly approaches that of the white people. It so happens that here in Washington that there is a very large contingent of the mixed race. They naturally were the first ones to come north, and the process of amalgamation with the Caucasian is still going on. The light-skinned Negroes say they have secured the greater proportion of teachers and have absorbed control of the schools simply because of the superior energy due to the admixture of white blood. They deny that there has been any favoritism and say that the light-skinned boys and girls learn much more rapidly than those of pure Negro blood, and hence they stand better in the examinations and are accordingly selected as teachers. The fight between the two factions has become exceedingly bitter, and at a meeting of the pure blacks, they denounced their fellows and declared it to be their deliberate judgment that the administration of the schools, which is in the hands of the light-skinned colored people, should be inquired into by a committee of Congress. This war of the pure Negro against the mixed race has been on the point of breaking out openly for a long time, but only now has it come to the surface directly. In Washington, there are many so-called colored people who are recognized as Negroes by their fellows, but who would easily pass, and do pass in a crowd, for white people, as they have at best an eighth or a 16th or even a 32nd of black blood. Now this is my commentary here. At a 32nd of black blood, is it not odd to you that they don't just call these people white? That is literally 3.125% black. Anyway, back to the article. According to the old slavery rule, they are recognized still as Negroes, and they generally attend the colored schools and churches. But nonetheless, they are inclined at times to snub their coal-black brethren, and the result has been the latter are casting about for some way in which to bar out the white Negroes from the schools intended for colored people. First, I just have to say that this writer has a way with words when describing dark-skinned black people and even white black people. But anyway, what I'm picking up here is that the darker teachers who were applying for positions were denied. The Blue Vein Society members claimed that it was because the lighter blacks were simply always smarter and always better qualified than the darker blacks. Do you buy it? And light-skinned boys and girls are simply faster learners than dark-skinned boys and girls. So quite naturally, according to Blue Vein Society logic, because the lighter black children learn faster, they will be the ones to occupy those coveted spots as students in those classrooms. Then, as adults, it only stands to reason that they will also be the only ones qualified to teach. So how could the cycle end? The point was that it wouldn't. And this perfectly illustrates how colorism becomes a system, not just individual incidents of, I don't like him because he's dark. And the final Blue Vein Society incident for this video comes from a 1911 issue of the Shreveport Journal. It reads, Blue Vein Society has peculiar sort of fun at expense of Negro Porter. Using stationery adorned with the crude drawing of a coffin, the Shreveport Blue Vein Society has undertaken to scare the daylights out of Addie Hall, a Negro porter employed for several years at the Meyer drugstore. Hall recently received a letter from the society, which is evidently composed of "Yaller niggers," reading as follows. And obviously that is a phrase that the writer came up with. That is not my own commentary. Back to the letter. The letter reads, Shreveport, Louisiana, February 23rd, 1911. Mr. Addie Hall, Shreveport, Louisiana. Dear Sir, we recognize you as a man, but we remember you are a black man. By foul flattery, you have seduced and married a daughter of the quadroon and octoroon race. We are content with our own kind, but you, a black man, not content with your own Owski women, must come and take advantage of the chance yet allowed you of taking and pulling down one of ours. However, this will not be possible in a few years. Yet, what you have done is done, and now you must pay the penalty. Leave Shreveport at once, or prepare to die soon. Beware. Shreveport Blue Vein Society, members 7 times 7 plus 1 plus 13. That is their letter. Back to the article. The matter was taken up with the sheriff's office, and at the direction of the sheriff, Hall will ask the post office authorities to investigate. In the meantime, Hall is going right along with his work at the drugstore and isn't losing any sleep over the threatened trouble that the yellow coons have up their sleeves in his behalf. However, joke or no joke, the letter went through the Shreveport post office, and the chances are that if Uncle Sam learns the identity of the society members, some of them will be wearing stripes. That is the end of that article. So, death threats. That's it. I don't think that this story requires any further commentary. I did look further to find out if a follow-up story was ever printed revealing the identities of these Blue Vein Society members, but it seems that this particular story was a one and done in Shreveport, Louisiana. Of these 3 news stories, which one was the most shocking to you and why? Let me know in the comments section. These stories are just a few of many stories in which blacks, or people who were considered to be legally black, displayed racist actions towards other blacks for simply being dark-skinned. Again, these Blue Vein Societies started popping up all over the nation just as slavery ended. Chattel slavery, a time when all shades of black people were seen as inferior. As soon as it ended, the first order of business was to make sure that darker blacks know that they were inferior. The notion seems sickening. And before someone leaves the comment, well, we all learned it from our masters during slavery, because when discussions about colorism arise, that comment is invariably in the mix, I have to disclose the uncomfortable fact that colorism existed among blacks before any black people ever had known what a slave master was. Perhaps that is a video that I can make for another time. Until then, do you see any remnants of the Blue Vein Society that exist in one form or another today? Let me know in the comments section. I'd love to see your answer. The Cotton Club became the spot for black people who wanted to be entertainers as Blue Vein Societies were coming to an end and the brown paperback test was in full swing. The Cotton Club hired its chorus girls by using the brown paperback test and referred to them as tall, tan, and terrific. Cab Calloway fought against this policy when he was hired as a band leader at the Cotton Club. I published a video about that story that you can see here. I will also leave a link to the video in the description box. My sources for this video are shortform.com, New National Era Archives, Arizona Republican Archives, Chicago Tribune Archives, and the Shreveport Journal Archives. If you want text notifications so that you can get a text 15 minutes before I release a video or 15 minutes before I live stream, simply send a text to 786-632-2135 to let me know that you want text, and you will get an outgoing text message 15 minutes before I have a new video release. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Ty Said What Ty Said channel. Please leave a thumbs up and comment so that we can get a discussion going. And share this video on all of your social media, especially your Facebook. That really helps me out a lot. And subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can know when my next video is ready for you. And if you don't like what I'm saying but you love it, feel free to hit that applaud button just below your video screen there and send me some
donations.
Yeah, baby. See you on the next video.